Welcome to Entrepreneurs International Network, where entrepreneurs learn, network, and grow. I'm Roger Killen, the organizer. Today, Jackie Lapin is training us on how to craft the podcast introduction sheet that turns you into a must-have guest. Jackie, I have got 3 questions for you. Number 1, what fun fact would you like us to know about you?
I was one of the first women sports writers in America, and I was featured on national television on the baseball game of the week when I launched my career at the Detroit Free Press.
Wow, that's quite a badge of honor. Question number 2, what are your special talents?
Being able to help leaders get on stages with all the different opportunities that I have assembled and that we do for authors and leaders and experts and coaches. And especially if I'm doing a radio podcast or writing a pitch letter that introduces them to 9,000 radio shows, that pitch letter is kind of my superpower.
Okay. Now, Jackie, when you use the term leaders, just to make sure that the audience members know that what you're going to be talking is relevant to them, could you put a little definition around leaders?
Sure. It's entrepreneurs, experts, coaches, authors, anybody that teaches their audience, their constituency, how to improve their businesses, their lives, or their future in some way, shape, or form.
That's perfect. Thank you very much. Now, before we go on to the 3rd question, which is, what is your favorite hobby? I'd like to see if I can help Angela. Angela has asked me to put on captions. What does that mean?
I wouldn't be the one to help you with that.
All right. If anyone, Angela, if you can help me understand what captions means, I'd be happy to support you, but I don't know what it means.
I believe she's meaning on the configurations, on the settings of the meeting, you can click a button to make captions available. I believe that's what she means.
Well, I can't go back into settings now. Okay, we just have to move on. All right, the question for you, Jackie, is what is your favorite hobby?
I have 2 of them. One is reading historic novels, sitting in my backyard on a Sunday afternoon. And the other one is I grow roses, 300 of them around my property.
My goodness. I used to live, I'm from Northern Ireland, and right across the street from me was a rose garden. It was called Dixon's Rose Garden. And my mom used to make me go into the rose garden and steal roses for her time to time, and then I got caught. No more stealing roses for Roger. All right, Jackie, are you ready to rock the stage? Oh, I've got a couple of announcements. Attendees, would you please turn on your video? From Jackie's point of view, it's not much fun talking to black, empty rectangles. Please, if you would, turn on your video. Stay muted and type questions into the chat. Now, I'll pose them all to Jackie during the course of her talk. Rest assured, your question will be answered. You're going to be sent a link to the recording of Jackie's workshop in a few hours, but nevertheless, I encourage you to take notes, because the very act of taking notes is going to increase what you absorb by as much as 30%. Jackie, are you ready to knock our socks off?
I am, but one just question, Roger, are you going to be admitting those people now? So I don't need to do that, yes?
I am. I'm taking over that job.
Yes, perfect.
Then she's all yours. Take her away.
Well, I am thrilled to be here today, everybody. This is my return visit to this wonderful meeting. And I really, really love this group because you guys are all engaged and you asked a lot of really intelligent questions. So I am going to help you, those of you that want to get on more podcasts, with the hottest new tool that podcasters are loving and that leaders are enjoying, because it gives them a fabulous way to introduce themselves to podcast hosts. And when you want to get on more podcasts, it is fabulous when you have something that showcases you brilliantly and makes you look like $1 million, to say the least. So I am going to introduce you to crafting the podcast introduction sheet that turns you into a must-have guest. So welcome aboard, ladies and gentlemen. So what's a podcast introduction sheet? Well, it's a powerful showcase that gets a leader, an expert, an author booked on podcasts that serve their audience. It helps you up-level your desirability and perceived credibility and professionalism. And it's a single capsule view of why you are a potent and powerful presenter for the host's audience, a summary of history of your credentials, your authority, and your expertise. They really need to know why you are the expert that you are and why you should be on their show. And then the last is an attachment to your introduction email to your formal radio or podcast pitch. Now you have to understand that a lot of times, that you don't want to load up your proposal pitch letter with too much fact. This can either be used in place of a proposal, a full proposal letter with just a simple, easy overview as to, why you're looking to get booked on the show. Or you can use it in place of a formal radio podcast pitch. So that way it really, it can make it a little bit easier on then instead of having to figure out exactly what you have to say in a formal pitch letter. Those are the kinds of things I love to write, but not everybody does. So this is a great solution. So a little bit more about me. So you just know that actually I do have the chops to help you get there. I'm an expert in helping leaders get booked. That's what I've been doing the last 12 years. I want to make sure that I smooth your mission by giving you the opportunity to get on the stages that matter to you. And I'll teach you how to do that, or I'll help you with it. So I've got 35 years in the publicity business. I had one of the largest sports special events and cable TV PR agencies in America for 20 years. But about 12 years ago, I switched into the space of helping leaders and authors who are making the world a better place, because that's where my heart was. And I rebranded my company, Conscious Media Relations, and then started doing that. And then over the last 5 years, we've really gotten into speaking engagements. So that altogether, I can credibly say that I've booked 1,000 interviews and speaking engagements, and I know how to get you in front of the people that are making the decision and helping you get them to give you a yes. So as I indicated, I'm actually the author of 2 best-selling books. The Art of Conscious Creation, How You Can Transform the World, and Practical Conscious Creation, Daily Techniques to Manifest Your Desires. That last book was the best spiritual book of the year at the International New Age Trade Show. And it was then when I wrote those books that I realized that my heart lay with the messengers of the world that were making it a better place, either for business people or for people who just wanted to improve their lives. And over the last 5 years, I'm the creator of Speakertunity, the speaker and leader resource company. We are here to smooth your path onto more stages. We do that by providing leads, direct leads, and doing all the research for you, training programs that'll help you get booked, and giving you the tools such as this podcast sheet that'll help you do that. This is a little bit about Speakertunity. You can see we have an array of services that are fabulous, and we want to invite you to come and take a look at it. This is the ultimate speaker toolbox. I bet you we've got something for everybody here. So come in and check it out. And I'm always here to help and provide resources and guidance to you, along with Kelly O'Hara, who's also on this program with me. She's lurking in the background here. So I'm going to talk about here what you're going to learn today. I'm going to teach you about writing the headlines and taglines that are going to make this podcast sheet pop. I'm going to show you how to master your biography, some of the ways that make that really sing. I'm going to show you how to gather the right testimonials that are going to impress a podcast host. And then we're going to talk about writing compelling topics. What are those that, that make them want to say, I want that person. This is a topic that looks interesting to my folks. And then adding some of the extra touches that are going to make it really stand out. And then scoping out some of the graphics elements, and then where to find the podcast to pitch. So we're going to hit all of these highlights so that you can really get a heads up. So if you want to start taking notes, here is the time to do that. So here we go. Crafting the podcast introductory sheet that turns you into a must-have guest. So what are the target audiences we're talking about? When you're writing a podcast sheet, you actually have two audiences for your podcast sheet. And you have to think about that when you're in the process of building this. The first one ultimately is the consumer, the listener, the audience. And by the way, when we talk about podcasts today, we're also talking about video casts, because so many of them are now visuals. They're not just an auditory function. They're placed on YouTube and Facebook Live. They're repurposed in numerous ways, both digitally, visually, and also audio. So you need to think about the audience and what it is that audience is going to need to hear from you that's going to make a difference in their lives. And you're going to have to address that to the host, because the second part of what you're doing is you're really addressing it to the decision maker. And that decision maker must be made to feel like you understand their audience and what they need. So when you're writing this, you're writing it from both standpoints. What is the host going to think, and what is the audience going to think? So keep that in mind when we're moving forward on this.
Jackie, you open to a question?
Of course.
I'm not sure this is the place for it, but let me ask it anyway. What technology do you use when you are delivering a podcast interview, i.e. microphone, etc.? And this question is from Roy.
Roy, I'll have to look, to be honest with you. I'm using a Samsung speaker. I use just a large Zoom with a Logitech camera, because I don't use a laptop with a built-in. I prefer the Logitech, and and then of course I have ring light. I have a ring light for when these shows are video as well as audio. So, and that ring light basically is right behind my computer and shines on me. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Jackie.
Okay. All right. So next, your positioning. This is so really important to you. What is the problem that you solve with your solution? That is the most important matter that you can convey in your podcast sheet. And it has to show this both in the headline and also in your bio. So what you're writing, your positioning must be benefit driven. What is the benefit to the audience? And think about this. How will the audience grow, change, be inspired, or move forward? So what you're writing when you're putting this together is addressing that issue. How will the audience grow, change, be inspired, and move forward? Now, the other thing that you need to think about is action-oriented. What actions are you going to help the audience take that is going to get them to this promised land that you're proposing to take them to? So you need to kind of hint at that in your materials to the podcast host, that you have solutions, and it might be 10 tips. It might be you have a, you know, a program, something to send them to, you have a free gift, you have something that's going to, in fact, give them a way to act on the information and advice that you give them. That is the positioning that you have to be thinking about and prepping when you're going to be writing the materials that you're doing for this podcast sheet. Now, here's the other thing that's so important. It's not about you, it's about them. If you're really writing this from the standpoint of, hey, here are my credentials, here's why I've got this, you know, here, what I've got is so fantastic. You know, I'm the cat's meow soda. I mean, you know, most people don't brag like that, but it basically, it talks about them. You're going to miss the boat because the host isn't going to accept you unless you basically make it all about the audience. Now, your credentials are important. They're secondary, but the real key message here is all about them. So when you're showing that you're generous, when you're showing that you're thinking about the audience, that's going to make them say yes to you, as opposed to, this person's got some credentials, but what have they got for my guys? So let's talk about the content writing. What is going to go into? Now, when we're talking about a podcast introductory sheet, normally we're basically talking about a one-pager. And I want to make this distinction because when you're doing a speaker one sheet for live and virtual stages, it's a two-pager. And the second page of that basically is all the different presentations, and you should have 3 of them when you're doing speaker sheet. So this is just a one page. We got to fit an awful lot on a very short amount of space. So let's talk about what those things should be. So the first thing is your headlines or your taglines, some key elements. Now, you really want to touch on these things when you're writing your headlines. Now, yeah, your name is a headline, yes, but you don't want to just make it your name. You want to give them some hint or promise of what the value proposition is that you're bringing. So you want to, you can touch on the pain point. This is what's showing the, you know, that you understand the problem. You might want to, and you want to keep it no more than 5 to 7 words in your headline, because otherwise it'll overwhelm the page. The next thing is your unique selling proposition, your value statement. So you can also look at this. What is it that's unique and that's different about you? How do you stand out? You could use that as a headline. But you want to really speak to what the differentiation is between you and a million other people that might be in your field, so that the host knows why you really are a cut above. The next thing you can key on in your headline is your brand. Do you have a unique brand? I mean, mine's all about, I'm the expert at helping leaders get booked. You might have a brand, and you want to narrow your brand just to a couple of words. You know, define yourself in a couple of words. You can use that as a headline. And then you want to also look, if there's a lot of gray space, you know, lots of text, you might want to break it up with a subhead or two. Just two words that kind of define what's the next things that are coming up in the context. So keep thinking about these headlines in that framework. You're speaking to the host to say, wow, here is what I'm bringing to the table in just a few words. Now, that headline has to have an implied promise. And I'm going to give you some samples of where people have used brands to imply that promise. So here's somebody saying that they're the career freedom coach, or the chief fear slayer, or more productivity, less turmoil, the change evolutionist, boldness coach, book shaman, write your book in a weekend. These basically promise some kind of benefit to the audience, and they've done it in very few words. So hone your words down to something very similar that really can show in a headline that what you're doing. I mean, the boldness goes, well, that clearly shows that you're going to teach your audience how to be bold. The change evolutionist, this person shows you how you're going to move through change without disruption. Chief Fear Slayer, I think everybody can figure out what that means. So think in terms of how you can package yourself this way. Next up, let's talk about writing your biography. So,
Jackie, before you get there,
Mhm.
a question from Sandy. Would
Mhm.
you please say more about the subheading?
the subheading might be, let's say you've got 4 paragraphs, and that's getting a little wordy on a biography, but let's say that you've got 4 paragraphs and somewhere in the middle of them. So the first paragraph is this problem you solve. The second paragraph, well, we'll get into more in this, and the third paragraph maybe addresses that the author, that you're the author of a book, and you just say author of name of the book, or or maybe let me think. I'm just thinking spoken at Google, or just a couple of little words that talk about what's in the next paragraph. But they're basically graphic dividers. It's because text can get very, very gray if you run like 4 paragraphs together. And sometimes just a little black bold headline in the middle just breaks up the copy and makes it more attractive. Does that make sense? You good with that? Okay.
Let's assume Sandy is. I'm quite sure she'll tell us if she's not.
Oh, I can see her. She's on my screen and she's nodding her head. So I think we're good. Terrific. Thank you. So let's talk about writing your biography. And, a lot of people I know are very intimidated, especially when you have to capture your life's work in just a couple of paragraphs. Most people feel that they are, what do I put in there? How do I do it? What's most important? And that's what we're going to look at here. Some little tips and techniques to making this a little bit more simplified for you. So I'm going to give you a series of questions to ask. And when you start working with these questions, it's going to help you decide what exactly are the elements that you need. And I'm going to give you all of these different elements. There's a ton of them, and you don't have to use all of them. What this is going to do is bring up all the different things you could put in there, and then you're going to start throwing out the things you don't need or that you can put at the bottom. But I want to give you the things that can help you figure out what can go into the bio, and then we'll talk about honing it. So the first question is, you're going to answer the question for the host of why you, what it is about you that makes you so memorable, so desirable to bring on the stage. So the first thing you want to talk about, is what's your mission? What are you here to do? What do you help people with? The next thing is there a specific thing you teach? Do you have a program? Is there a body of work that you formulated? What is the real core of what you're offering? And then you might want to get into some of your specific expertise. Like Roger was kind enough to say, well, what's one of your great skills? Well, one of mine is writing radio podcast pitch letters. What are your specific expertise that applies to this audience and what you're going to teach them on this podcast? Who do you transform? What is your target audience? Because the host wants to know that you're obviously talking to his folk. And if your target audience is somebody else over here, if you're trying to, if he has an audience or she has an audience of millennials, and you normally really are teaching this for middle-aged women, that is not a match. So you really want to address, who do you transform? And you can say that in your text. What are your results? Now, this is a great time to crow. What programs have you done? How results have you taken X number of people to certain milestones of revenue, or saved 35 people from suicide? I mean, whatever it is that you've done, that you've got very tangible results for what you offer, then you want to assemble a couple of lines of what that might be of value. And why are you different? And we addressed that a little bit earlier. What's unique about you? what you address that other people don't, or how do you do it in a way that nobody else does? So, what brings you to the place of being a differentiator? So these are the things that you want to do under the why you category. This is the first set of questions. The next set of questions is your story in brief. What is your story? What have you overcome? This is very common for people who are in the personal growth space. You're teaching something from the heart-based place of the fact that you had a real dip in your life, something awful happened, something you had to overcome, and now you're teaching people the way out, the path forward. So if that's, whether it's business, whether it's personal growth, whatever, do you have a story of overcoming that this audience might relate to, and that's going to be of interest to the podcaster? Oh, that's an interesting story. Let's, I'd love to have them tell that. So the next one is, what are your victories or demonstrations of success? We talked a little bit about results, but sometimes results aren't victories. What things have you done that really show your success? And that could be what other people have said about you. It could be that you climbed Kilimanjaro, just to show that, that other people that, you can do it, be an inspirational leader, all of those kinds of things. So you want to look to see what you have in your history that might work for. How has this informed your mission or your teaching? If we talked about what you've overcome, now we want to talk about how that has actually influenced what you're teaching today. And then how do you relate to this audience? Really, is your story their story? It's tragic that so many women and even men have suffered sexual abuse. And if you have, and this podcaster's audience has also had that experience, well, it's tragic that is, you're probably a perfect match, because this audience, you will understand them and they will understand you. So, but it could be a business situation. It could be, aging and, the aging crowd and things you went through and things that they're going through now. So you want to really address in your, one of the things you can do in your bio of how you relate to this audience. So that's a really key question. The next set of questions is, what else do you bring to the table? What's your background? Businesses you founded or worked for, positions that you've held that have helped qualify you for where you are now, clients you've served in the past, really, the kinds of clients that are going to impress this host. If you've worked for mega companies, if you work with celebrities, if you've worked with a new hot product and, that's taking the world by storm, Fortune 500, all of those kinds of things are going to impress them. So look at those kinds of things. The next thing is specialized skill or program that you've developed. Do you have a particular program or specialized skill that really makes you stand out as the expert that you are? And this is, not always necessary for a bio today, especially in this case, but depending on what it is, it might be degrees or certifications that make you really qualified to speak on what you speak on. And then the last thing, again, this isn't necessarily critical in much of today's world, but if you've served on boards that really establish you as a real leader in your industry, that might also prove to be of value. So what else do you bring to the table that might be pertinent for your bio? Well, achievements in all kinds of different things that you might be looking at that point to your accomplishments and your expertise. If you have a book, a radio or a podcast show, or other media that are really significant, these are things that you wanted to bring out. And we'll talk about using graphics for some of those things a little bit. Maybe you have a great YouTube channel that's got tons of great videos. Fortunately, Speakertunity, we have one that's growing. We just did a series called Speaking A to Z, and I literally have 21 A to Z tips on it. And we've got tons of videos that educate people, and it has a growing audience. If you have a YouTube channel that is expanding, then you want to pro about that. The next thing is awards you have won. Certainly, if there are other people that have put their imprimatur on you, that is certainly a really good thing to say. Or if your book has been on the New York Times bestseller list, or Amazon #1 bestsellers, all of those things that are things that you can mention. And then related charities you serve, if this is really impressive, the kinds of thing that make you show that you are a heart-based leader in the world as well. These are all things that you can consider adding. Social proof. What social proof do you have? Where have you spoken before? We talked a little bit about that in the one. Who are your current clients? Those are people, obviously, that make you look great if you got somebody that people recognize. Celebrities you've worked with. Now, what's nice about celebrities is, obviously you don't have to have a long-term relationship with them and have, been in their, done oodles with them. But hey, if you've been in their programs, and when I say celebrities, I'm also not just talking about Hollywood celebrities. I'm talking about celebrities in your industry, that you've either worked with, they've served you've served them. Friends that have endorsed you. Celebrities always really make things glamorous. And then media that have featured you. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And then size of online followers. If you have astronomical numbers, you want to mention that, because podcast hosts always like to know that you're going to promote them. And if you've got a big audience, it's going to give you a bigger chance to get on their show. And then numbers of any kind that are impressive. These are all the different things that you can use to really make your bio exciting. So I'm going to give you a sample of one. This was Jonathan Robinson, triple your memory and confidence and have your stress. There's his promise in a couple of words. Stressed out individuals don't reach their productivity capabilities. Simply put, they underperform because they are far from happy. As a leading happiness expert, there's his brand, Jonathan Robinson has used his formidable skills to fix that problem. He will guide your listeners. He will guide your listeners and will offer a strategy that will not only reduce stress, but as a bonus, increase memory. His triple your memory and confidence and have your stress is acclaimed by the legion of attorneys, accountants, and other professionals to whom he's presented across the nation. He speaks regularly to Fortune 500 companies such as Google and Dell. With Jonathan being a happiness expert, you can be assured that your audience will not only be unstressed, but end up smiling and take action in precise ways, that's the promise, that are more effective than they previously could imagine. Robinson has taught more than 100 million people simple ways to be happier through TV shows such as Oprah and CNN, and with his 10 international best-selling books. Some have featured interviews with the late Mother Teresa, Dalai Lama, Jpeg Chopra, Dr. Wayne Dyer, this is Celebrity Connection, among others. In his fun and interactive conversations, audiences are given powerful and useful tools that can increase productivity at home and at work through creativity, engagement, and a sense of purpose. Learn more about finding happiness in Jonathan Robinson and his website. That's only 6 paragraphs, and 2 of them are very short. And I'll bet you kind of a pretty good idea of what he does. But so now I've wrapped it all up and shown you exactly how you could take that and really captivate that. So one of the things that I'm going to tell you about is basically taking all those questions that I proposed and basically numbering them by priority. Which are the ones that are most important in the order that you think that they really should come together? And then you can start organizing things in that fashion by leaving out the lowest ones on the list. So it's a really good and easy way to take advantage of building your profile.
Jackie, you got time for a couple of questions?
Absolutely.
All right. So Heidi is asking the question, so what if you don't have big audiences? I'm not sure if that means big lists, but the term Heidi used was audiences.
Well, are you meaning that you've not spoken to big companies before? You've really just only spoken to smaller groups? And because if you can clarify that for me, essentially, it doesn't matter if you have big names in your, as long as you.
So Heidi is saying she does not have a huge following on social media.
Oh, it doesn't matter. You just don't want to bring it up if you don't. If you have a big one, you want to bring it up. But if you don't have a big one, you don't bring it up. Just let it slide.
Barry is asking, when you say celebs worked, that would mean just interviews with them?
No, it means, have you been in, you've been a coach with Tony Robbins, or you've done branding work for some Hollywood celebrity, or you have you've been on the stage. Oh, that's a lot that speakers use. I've been on the stage with so and so and so and so and so and stuff. That doesn't mean you actually had any engagement with them, but you've been on the same stages with those people. Is that kind of helpful?
Kate wants to know, as a new seeker of podcasts, how do I make my one-pager compelling without the depth you speak of?
Well, I think, you have to find what's unique about you. If your program is just what everybody is speaking about, you're going to find it hard to get bookings with speaking engagements or with podcasters. You have to stand out. Now, that doesn't mean you have to have a massive following. Doesn't mean that you've been on all these stages. I mean, I have started out many times from the standing position, and it's really in the way you write it. You can convince somebody that you're fabulous, even if you don't have a fabulous track record, if you really write it with power and distinction, and you make yourself sound really unique and different. What is it that you can teach or do that nobody else, or if not that nobody else does, that is specific to you? Is that helpful?
Deborah would like to know, when just getting a business started, what is the best way to begin getting on podcasts?
Well, what we're talking about. Let's obviously you want to create either a pitch letter or a podcast sheet like this that speaks to what you're going to teach and why it's important to that audience. And, and then position yourself, go after the podcast that you want on. But the one thing I will tell you is that if you're in the beginning of your journey, do not go and just try to get the biggest podcasts, because they're not going to say yes to you. Go to the ones that are smaller, people friends that you have podcasts, ask around, put things out on social media, go to people in your masterminds, those kinds of things. So they're friendly and warm, and they like you already, and they're going to give you a stage. And start warming up, and then you build up and you grow, and then you could say, well, I was here and I was here and here. Is that helpful?
Yes, no further questions. Back to you, Jackie.
Okay. So to summarize what we were just saying about your bio, you want to create magic in no more than 7 short paragraphs. And here's the good part about it. Some of you might feel like, hey, I don't like writing about myself. I don't want to boast about myself. But first of all, this isn't the place to be humble. If you want to get on podcasts, you need to really speak to how fabulous you are. But the good news is you're writing it in the third person. It's as if you're writing it about somebody else. So it's a whole lot easier to write about this person that you're talking about than yourself. So shed your fear of, feeling that you're being boastful. This is a great place. And I'm going to give you one other suggestion. When you're writing this bio, use really powerful adjectives, because great adjectives, one word can take up what 10 or 15 words can in description. So you say things like powerful, best-selling, acclaimed, award-winning. When you use those kinds of adjectives, they really make you give you a bump up. So writing, how you write this is just as important as what you write. So next up, we're going to talk about the topics. What is it you're going to tell the person that you're going to speak of? Now, when you're doing a podcast introductory sheet, part of it is devoted to the bio, part of it's devoted to the headlines, and then the next largest section is going to be devoted to what are the topics you speak on. And in this case, unlike a speaker one sheet where you go into great depth about what it is that you're going to be speaking on, with a podcast sheet, all you need is one line to one paragraph description, depending on how much space that you want to allot to this on that page. So if your bio is shorter, you can do a little bit longer descriptions. If your bio is really long, then you're really left with one-liners. So you want to make sure that these topics are compelling. This is what's going to get somebody to say yes to you. The bio is half of it, the topics are the second half of it. So you want to punch up the title or this little one line as to why it's fun or interesting. Like, you saw with Jonathan, twice the memory, half the stress, what is the problem and the benefit, and the speak to the pain of the audience, imply a benefit. You want to also, and we were talking about using powerful adjectives in your bio. This is also a place to use powerful action verbs and powerful adjectives in those little one-liners or in those paragraphs. Then speak to the pain of the audience, and we just said, hint at the intended outcome, that implied promise on the subject matter. Try to be, what is it that they need to know that's going, this audience, that's going to help their lives be better? What are you going to tell that's going to be really interesting and get to catch their attention? Another thing to do is to try to be timely. You can provide a hook, something that speaks to immediacy. Now, over the last year or so, the topics have been obviously race, pandemic, climate change. If you're in the political space, which we're not going to talk about, you can talk about the polarities. Here, you want to pick something that is current and topical. If you're teaching something, well, Clubhouse, the first half of this year, that was really the hot thing to talk about. If you know something, and you can also use things like recurring themes, like seasonal recipes, or I'm just trying to think, things that come back around. Keep in mind that this podcast sheet is going to be used all year round. So it can't be something that's like going to happen next week. It's got to be something that thematically can spread out over time. And just a reminder to you, most of these podcasts, they are not, some of them are live, but many of them are pre-recorded. And which means that they won't hear you for a month or so until after it's recorded. And in some cases, when you're booking your podcast, you may be booking it now, but they may actually be having you on in 3 or 4 or 5 months when they have an opening. Some of these people are booking way out. So when you're thinking about your hooks and it can't be something immediate like Christmas, unless you're just going for something like radio, which is very immediate. You need to speak to something that may be timely, but it's timely over a period of time. And this is also not to say that you cannot change out your podcast sheet, once every 6 months with add new topics. That's something that you can do as well. So you want to offer 4 to 5 topics. When the interviewer is looking at these topics, he may pick one of them to center the interview, or he may pick all 4 or 5. So you want to, give them food for thought. And then one other tip that you should all know is that when you're going on a podcast, you should be giving the host your questions, and they should make them 20 questions, because most of these shows are now an hour. You want to give them 20 questions in advance, so that they will speak to the topics that you have here on this podcast sheet. You will basically walk them through these topics so that they cover them in the course of the interview. And it allows you to create a roadmap so that the audience is actually following you to where you want to take them. A free gift, join your program, get on your Facebook page, whatever all else. So you want to use that as a roadmap. So here are some of the ways that you can do that. Your most popular media topics. So what I've done is I made 4 different samples of how you can do this. One, a full paragraph descriptions. And I'll give you a sample here. These are the actual people that are using these. Dr. Brian Garrett, chiropractor and health coach. How to live to 100 and not regret it. Now, wouldn't you want that subject? That sounds like fun. And then here's his whole explanation. Learn the indicators of looming problems and what needs to be done to fix it naturally as possible. Medications save lives when used appropriately, but minimizing dependence on medicine and sowing the seeds of health and lifetime fitness are the best strategy for living longer, better lives. Balance and proactive health are at key. So that's going to be, and I won't go through reading it, but that gives you an idea of a full paragraph of what he's doing. The run to the right is short title, brief description. So this is from Hazel. The Time Bandit, learning to have balance and focus with better time management. From fear to fantastic, how to overwhelm and conquer fear. Creating a stress-free life, tools for learning to decrease overwhelm and stress. Now, the one below that, 5 short one-liners, come from me. 44 ways to seduce your next client from stage. Irresistible opt-in ideas. You'll hear more about that later. 10 secrets successful speakers use to keep their speaking calendar filled year-round. Visibility, the key to attracting new clients and changing more lives. The 3 powerful ways to engage new prospects. 20 factors that tip the scales in your favor to get booked on a podcast. You get the picture there, ladies and gentlemen. And then this one on the left is short but sweet, from Camille Leon, founder of the Holistic Chamber of Commerce. From stress to success, creating connections and community that count. Holistic approach to business. These are all ways that you can do your topics. So it's giving you lots of different ideas and ways that you can make these sing.
Jackie, time for a question.
Of course.
Roy asks, my upcoming book is called The Post-Pandemic Playbook for Small Business. Will that work for podcasts?
I think that's great. That definitely is right in there, in the sweet spot.
That was a yes for you, Roy. Back to you, Jackie. No further questions.
But Roy, in 6 months, you're going to need another title. That's just one thing you're going to need, because people are going to be looking for something else in 6 months. Just keep that in mind, because we'll be post-pandemic by then. I mean, it's still going on, but they're going to want something fresh. But that's great for now. Okay, next up, testimonials. You want at least 2 testimonials on your podcast sheet. Now, there are some that are better than others. The first and foremost is other podcasters or broadcasters who have interviewed you. If you can show, if you have a testimonial from somebody said, she knocked it out of the park on our show, or he was absolutely so right for our business audience, or whatever it might be. Those are 2 things that you really want to add in here, but you want to show the host that other hosts have loved you. That is an absolute home run. Now, if you can't do that, then you can use celebrity advocates. Obviously, that's great. And again, it's celebrities in your business, not necessarily Hollywood. And then the audience that have heard you, listeners that have heard you, or clients. Those are kind of placeholders. You can use those if you don't have them from other podcasters or broadcasters who've interviewed. But I would encourage you to go back to those people who shows you have been on, and see if, and especially when they loved you, and see if you can get a couple of those testimonials that you can use on your podcast sheet. Shall I move on? More questions?
Yeah, no further questions.
Okay, next up, your call to action. You want to, when you have a podcast sheet, you don't want to just say, here's it, and there's my telephone number. You want to say what it is you want. You need to tell them to take action. So you want a call to action. So what would they be? Book her for a compelling interview. Invite him on your show to inspire your listeners. Grant her a spot on your show and your audience will see their sales rocket. Host him for an interview that will transform your listeners. I see you guys probably can see what we're doing here. So you want to have a call to action in addition to your contact information. Okay, moving on. There's the contact information. And you need to think, in most cases today, it's just you doing the booking. But if you happen to have an assistant and you'd rather have them do book the interview, then go ahead and put them on. But in most cases today, it's better to be you. You want to include your phone number, your email, and sometimes, especially in the business space, it's really good just to include LinkedIn, because that's really going to give them the rest of the picture of you and what you do. So that's useful. And, you can put Facebook on here if it's really something special, but you don't have a lot of room. I recommend, possibly for Facebook when you're doing a speaker sheet, because you've got more space. But when it comes to a podcast sheet, when you're dealing with only one page, keep it to the bare minimum and make it easy for them to find you. Don't make them chase you down. Don't give them don't give them Facebook because you want them to contact you on Facebook Messenger. You really need to make it on a phone and an email. It's the simplest ways. So, excuse me. Let's talk about graphics, because this is a real significant factor. You don't want to go to all this trouble, excuse me, of putting this all together and have something that looks kind of cheesy. So here are some of the elements. You want to have quality headshots with a little context. You've got, you don't want a real close up on your head in this kind of a sheet. You want something that, has a nice, you leaning up against the wall. Yeah. You got some faded in the background, maybe next to your book. I mean, give them a little context. So it, or maybe on stage. So it looks a little bit more than just a straight headshot. And you don't want to do things like this. Bad images or sleep-inducing photos. One's too sexualized there on the top and the middle. The one on the right is just too out of focus. The one on the left, the woman looks like she's in horrible pain. I got to tell you, that's my shot there on the bottom, guys, but it is not the most flattering photo I have ever taken. It wouldn't be my first choice. So, look at it. Does it make you look good? And then the last one, of course, is so dark, you really can't see it. So don't shoot from your cell phone, get professionally done shots, and don't use them that are 10 years old. You need something that looks like you now.
Time for a couple of questions.
Yep.
Okay. Gloria wants to know if you should put your website information as well.
Oh, yes. Sorry, I overlooked that. You absolutely should.
Buddy wants to know, do you deliver the podcast sheet digitally, online, or in the mail?
Mostly online, attached to your cover note. Now, it's nice if you can, in mail, but most of these podcasters won't even give you an address. So I'd be really surprised if you can find them.
No further questions. Back to you, Jackie.
Okay. So graphics can be credibility builders. And you want to make it look cool. You want to have more on there than just your picture. So these are different kinds of things that you can put on there. You use your logo. That's an obvious one. Then other media logos like NPR or the talk radio or Coast to Coast or Entrepreneurs on Fire, Buddha at the gas pump, CNN. Those are all great kinds of logos. And one of the nice, when you're talking about radio, even if you're using a local station, you can, and it's an ABC station, you can use the ABC logo. And then client logos, as we talked about, if they're really super, and don't take up space with them if they're not. And then award logos, medallions and things like that, bestseller, #1 bestseller and things like that. All of these things will help create graphic appeal to your podcast sheet, and just add a little zing and excitement to it. And then color selection. You really want to have colors that stand out. And there's lots of ways to do that. You can do 2 primary colors, like you see there's a little crosshatch there on the right-hand one. Those are colors that go together. If you look across the center there, those are colors that match well together. And then you could use 3 colors like you see on the one on the left. But the point is, and if you have branding colors, use the exact branding colors that you use. So you want to pick colors that are going to jump, really, really jump. You just don't want to work this hard to have something that doesn't work. I've got, these are samples of things that people have done to pitch themselves for speaking engagements and podcasts. And this is not interesting. So you really need to make sure that you've got something here that will instantly hit people's eyeballs and think, wow. So here are your design options. You can do it yourself if you have graphic design skills. You can go to somebody like Fiverr or Upwork or Elance, but let me tell you the liability to do that. If you go to those companies and you work with somebody, by giving them a bid and they give you, a bid to do it, most of those people are, as you know, overseas. And they do your speaker sheet, and then now you want changes on it. Maybe it's 3 months later, you've added a new different presentation, you've added a new credit, you want to add something to it. You try to go back and find those people, you won't. Many of them drop off those services all the time. So if you think it's one and done and you don't need it ever again, well, yeah, that's worth doing it, but I wouldn't recommend it if you ever think you're going to need some changes to it. The next thing is do a custom one design professional designer. People do speaker sheets and podcast sheets, and it could cost you a lot of money to have a professional designer do it all for you, start to finish. And I know people that have gone down that rabbit hole thinking that they're going to pay this, but by the time they went through all the changes, et cetera, it's a lot more than they thought they were going to be paying in the forefront. Or there is another choice. It's called Speakertunity Sheets, and it's professional design, but from a template, which makes it faster and easier, and it makes it much better to control your costs. But we're going to talk about that in a minute. This is what putting a speaker sheet, a podcast introductory sheet together looks like, where you can pick interesting colors. You can make it jump out at you. You can have the logos on it. You can have the your topics here. All of these things in different ways, and it makes it. And there's your testimonials also that really are compelling and interesting. That make this show that you're a cut above, and that it's a sure bet for this host. That's just an idea of what it looks like when you put it all together. So, as I mentioned, Speakertunity Sheets. This is the interactive podcast sheet design service. And yes, this is mine. And what makes this so simple and easy is that you select from an existing template, and you then get a chance to pick your colors, and you don't even have to think about what to put in it, because we've given you all that information here, and it's a form. All you do is fill all that form with all the things we just told you to do here. You just fill out the form, send it in, and we will turn it back to you in just a couple of days. Simple and easy and flexible. And you do have review opportunities, and hey, I want to move this around, I want to change this. And the nice thing about working with a real designer as opposed to just a template is you can't change that. But my designers look at this and they say, oh, this would be better if we didn't use this here. We maybe, they give us some extra things. We want to put it here. They'll move it around and make it work so that it really sings for you.
Jackie, a question from Barry. What point size and are there sizes of the fonts?
I'm not really particularly versed in what exactly size font works. The designer really helps make that choice. And if you have a preference, you can state it, but they'll make it based on the quantity of information you give them, and still so that it reads well. What was the first part of that question, Roger?
The question was, what's the point? I think Barry means, what's the point size that you recommend for the different pieces of text on the page? And then he's asking for sizes of the fonts. Maybe he means, what's the font and what's the point size of the font?
Usually there's something simple, like Arial or Calibri. Not something, something that doesn't have serifs. It's real simple, but they're going to pick different fonts for the headlines and things like that, just to make it stand out. So, but when you look at the templates, you're going to have a pretty good idea of the different kinds of fonts that they use.
And Sandy is asking, are they sent as a JPEG or a Word document or what?
You will send them as a PDF. PDF is the best way. Now you can make a JPEG out of it if you need to for some reason, like, put it into an email, but you're best to attach it as a JPEG. I mean, as a PDF,
Thank you.
You're welcome. So here's one of the other benefits. This is really, really affordable. There are 0 cost overruns. We're never going to come back to you and say, oh, there's too much here. We need to do more. We need more time. We need to charge you more money. Doesn't happen like this. And you know what you're spending when you're going in, and you know exactly what you're going to get out of it because you've already seen the template. It's not like you're going to get something back and think, God, I don't like that design, because you've already picked it. And it's just basically going to be fit to your specifications. So just an idea of what some other people have said about this. This is Tanya Brockett. She said, why spend time designing a speaker one sheet? She also did a podcast sheet from scratch when Speakertunity can do it for you. Every author, leader, and thought leader who has a message needs this. I am grateful now that I have mine. It looks great. Talk about a great return on investment. Here's from Camille Leone. I love my podcast promo sheets. From the initial questionnaire to the draft and revision process, Speakertunity's level of quality and attention to detail is excellent. As someone with a big message to get out in the world, this would make it easier for decision makers to see my value and hire accordingly. Speakertunity is our HCC recommended, that's Holistic Chamber of Commerce, recommended resource for speakers and leaders, especially those in the holistic market niche. And this was Brian Garrett. This service is great, perfect layout and very professional. I love my speaker and podcast sheets. So here's what I'm offering you today. Our podcast introductory sheet is normally $299. You can't beat the price for a professionally designed complete podcast sheet that will turn into dollars and stages for you, and podcasts and more podcasts and more podcasts. But here's the thing, for this EIN community, I'm going to give you a 20% discount. It's only going to be $239. And all you have to do is to take advantage of that is to go to speakertunity.com/sheets and use this coupon code, save 20 sheets. Speakertunity.com/sheets, coupon code, save 20 sheets. You put that in on checkout. Now, Roger's also going to put that into the chat box here in a minute so that you can have it. So let me move on. Now you'll have your great podcast sheet and where to send it. Hey, you want to get on more podcasts, don't you? Would you like an easy way to do that so that you don't have to do all the work of finding those podcasts? So if you order your podcast sheet today, I'm also going to give you 2 months free in any or all of our Speakertunity monthly lead services, including Speakertunity speaker leads. Now that's live and virtual stages all across North America. That gives you meetings, conferences, TEDx's, spiritual centers, bookstores, and more, and associations and more. The second one is, and here's where you get your Speakertunity Radio Insider, radio shows, podcasts, and videocasts, 40 of them every single month that are life-enhancing radio shows. Anything that improves one's life, that makes them, and that's personal growth, spirituality, health and wellness, relationships, living better, anything in that whole spectrum of improving one's life. I'm also going to give you Speakertunity Summits, which is our virtual summit that gives you virtual summits that are looking for guest presenters and giveaways that are looking for partners so that you can grow your opt-in list and get on more summits. And so you can use your podcast sheet when you're also pitching your summit hosts. And lastly, if your audience is a B2B audience, then we have this brand new product that we are getting great response from, Speakertunity Radio Insider for Business, where we give you 40 radio shows, podcasts, and a video cast that are just speaking to business audiences, entrepreneurs, CEOs, people transitioning into the business and entrepreneurial space, women's business. All of that is just waiting there for you. So what you get when you sign up for your podcast sheet today includes 80 podcasts, radio shows, and video casts monthly. And the rest of these leads, this 2 months free, are going to give you about almost 480 leads, I think, is it altogether, with 120 you get each month on speaker leads. Now, if you're not getting booked by when you're starting out and pushing your sheets out to these people, I would be very surprised. I think that, you want to get on your podcast fast and not have to spend your time searching for them. This is going to be your avenue.
Jackie, a couple of questions. Caitlin asks, will there be a worksheet available with all this information on it to help you create this, or do we just have our notes?
Actually, you would be better to take the recording and work through that and the notes at this point. There is not, when you actually go in, let me just, this is much more detailed. When you go into the form and put your form in, then it's going to say, give us your bio, give us your call to action, give us your topics. So, it prompts you to do that, but this was much more detailed into what you should prepare for that. And when you're pitching yourself, basically you're just, you're creating a few paragraphs of introduction saying what it is you speak on, why you would be right for this audience, and then include your podcast sheet. Is that helpful?
Gloria asks, how often are people paid for speaking versus doing it for exposure or free?
Okay, that is speaking as opposed to podcasts. Can we address that one again in a minute?
Yep, we're running pretty much out of time. Here's the second question from Gloria. Is there a date by which you have to start? I think she means if you have to start the creation of your podcast sheet. Can I postpone it until, for instance, January 2022? You
can purchase it now, and you don't have to do it until then. If you want to get all the bonuses, you purchase it now, and you can't, this is when you can use this is where you get to use your 20%. You won't get the 20% if you do it later. So do it now, but you don't have to fill in and give us all the information until you are ready. And one of the things it tells you when you go in, it says bookmark this page, and then you can come back to that page and start the inputting process. Is that helpful?
Angeli wants to know, is there a package for getting both a podcast sheet and a speaker sheet?
There is indeed. There is indeed. And you actually can use that 20% coupon to get both.
No further questions.
So here is the offer that I was just giving you. 160 podcasts for you for over 2 months time. So I want to encourage you to take advantage, but I'm also going to tell you about something else. I'm just going to take a minute or two to tell you about something that you should know about if you want to also get on stages. And these are our 2 new products at Speakertunity. I just want to make you aware of this. No sales pitch here. Just want to tell you about them. We do. Now, if you want to get on stages close to home, Speakertunity Cities has 75 regional market speaker lead directories. We cover all the US and Canada, and they have up to 2,000 speaker leads just in your market in 4 categories: business, which is subdivided into 55 industries, ethnicities, and gender; all the service groups in your area, including you Canadians, kin clubs; all the direct to consumer special interests, like moms groups, parenting, seniors, health and wellness support groups, military, LGBT, and other special interest groups, bookstores, libraries, and hospitals; and then spiritual unity, centers for spiritual living and consciousness meetings, and other faith-based groups. Now, let's say you don't want to talk to all those different areas. You just have one specific niche. You can also go over to Speakertunity Speaker Specialties. We have 60 individual niches, and you can simply pick your niche all across North America. So if you want women's business meetings, or coaches, or authors, or real estate people, or whatever it is, we've got 60 different niches. And if all of the US and Canada is too much for you, you can break it down and just get one of the regional lists: East, West, South, Midwest, or Canada. So you can go on over to Speakertunity, check in on these 2, and just investigate for the future. So one last thing, I want to give you a freebie. When you are out on your podcasts, you are going to want to give something away so that you can get your audiences to engage with you. You want to get people to come on that pod, who can listen to you on that podcast, to take action, to connect with you and get into your opt-in list, to build that relationship. So this is a great ebook that I've created called 44 Ways to Seduce Your Next Client from Stage, Podcast, Radio, Virtual Summits, and Virtual Networking. And if you want to take advantage of that, you go to speakertunity.com/seduce. It's going to open your eyes to all the different ways that you can get people to come into your community without just talking about an ebook or a free consultation. We got dozens and dozens of different unique ways to get them interested. So there you go. All of these things, I want to make sure you got great value here, on all fronts. And we want to take care of you at Speakertunity, however you need to get on your stages. So I can stop sharing. Is that
Jackie,
okay, Roger?
Jackie, do I have a link to www.speakertunity.com?
Not in the chat box. I didn't give you the main link, but I can do that. It's simply HTTPS. So
www.speakertunity.com. Seduce.
Yeah, that's in there. That link is up there. I gave that to you earlier.
Speaker, I got it. Yep. Yes, by all means, you can stop share.
Here we go.
So I am putting that into the chat. 44 ways to seduce or get seduced or something like that, right?
Yeah, that's right. Just say, we say 44 ways.
Okay, beautiful. Now we're all out of time, so allow me to thank you hugely as per usual. I mean, you have such a knack of taking something incredibly complicated and really boil it down to its essential elements. So well done, Jackie. On behalf of EIN's 80,000 members, we thank you to the moon and back.
Thank you, Roger. It is a joy to be here. And anybody who wants to reach out to me, you can reach out to me at Jackie@speakertunity.com, and I'm happy to help you.
Okay.